A cheerful atmosphere surrounds a Filipino community center. Inside, volunteers are busy cooking traditional food, hanging decorations, and setting up tables with donation boxes. Laughter fills the air as children run around and elders share stories. It was a special day for this close-knit Filipino-American community. Every year they hosted a charity event to help the homeless and those in need, blending their rich cultural heritage with their passion for giving back. But today, an unexpected visitor would change everything. The camera pans to Maria, the event organizer, an energetic woman in her 40s. She's giving instructions to volunteers. Maria: "All right, everyone, let's make this our best event yet. Remember, this isn't just about us, it's about making a difference." Suddenly, the sound of screeching tires interrupts the lively atmosphere. A police car pulls up and Officer Mark, a middle-aged white cop with a stern expression, steps out. He surveys the scene with suspicion. "Mark, what's going on here? Who's in charge?" Everyone goes quiet. Maria steps forward. Maria: "Officer, I'm Maria. We're hosting a charity event. We have all the permits." Mark, interrupting: "Permits, huh? Let me see them." Maria hands over a folder. Mark glances at it briefly, then hands it back without really looking. "Mark, looks sketchy to me. I've seen these so-called charity events before. Shut it down, now." The crowd murmurs in disbelief. Maria: "But officer, we've done everything by the book." Mark, raising his voice: "I said shut it down, or do I need to start writing tickets?" Volunteers reluctantly start packing up. Children look confused, and some elders shake their heads in frustration. Officer Mark's perspective: back at the precinct, Mark talks to a fellow officer, Jim, while writing his report. Jim: "So, what was the deal with that charity event?" Mark: "Same old story. These immigrant communities always pull something shady, probably laundering money or hiding something illegal." Jim, frowning: "You don't think you might have jumped the gun? Not everyone's out to break the law, you know." Mark: "Yeah, right. I've seen enough to know better." The camera lingers on Mark's face, showing his ingrained biases and unwillingness to consider alternative perspectives. The call that changes everything. Later that evening, Mark is sitting in his patrol car, proud of what he thinks was a job well done. His phone rings. Mark, casual, Officer Mark speaking. Voice on the other end: "Officer Mark, this is the First Lady of the United States." Mark freezes, his confident demeanor crumbling. Mark: "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" First Lady, firmly: "I just received reports that you shut down a Filipino charity event earlier today. Are you aware that event was under my sponsorship?" Mark, stammering: "Ma'am, I didn't know. I was just following protocol." First Lady: "Protocol? Did you even bother to verify the permits? That event was helping feed hundreds of homeless individuals. Your actions not only disrespected that community, but also undermined a cause I deeply care about." Mark is speechless. He tries to respond, but the call ends abruptly. He sits in silence, realizing the gravity of his mistake. Accountability at the station. The next day, Mark stands in front of his supervisor, Captain Roberts, who looks unimpressed. Captain Roberts: "Mark, do you have any idea the kind of trouble you've caused? The First Lady herself called about your behavior. You've embarrassed this department." Mark, lowering his head: "I didn't mean to cause any harm, sir. I thought—" Captain Roberts, interrupting: "You didn't think, Mark. That's the problem. You acted on bias instead of facts. I'm assigning you mandatory community sensitivity training, effective immediately, and you'll be personally apologizing to that community." Mark nods, visibly humbled. A public apology. Back at the community center, the event has resumed with the First Lady's support. Mark walks in, dressed in civilian clothes, looking nervous. Maria spots him and approaches, arms crossed. Maria: "Officer Mark, what are you doing here?" Mark: "I came to apologize. I was wrong. I judged you all unfairly, and I'm sorry." Maria studies him for a moment, then softens. Maria: "It takes courage to admit you were wrong, but actions speak louder than words." How about you help us serve lunch today?" Mark hesitates, then nods. He rolls up his sleeves and starts serving food. The crowd watches, some skeptical, but others nodding in approval. A changed perspective. Later, Mark sits with Maria and some volunteers sharing a meal. "Mark, I never realized how much work goes into something like this. You're doing something incredible here." Maria, "All we've ever wanted is to make a difference. It's not easy, but we do it because it matters." Mark looks around, seeing the smiles and laughter. For the first time, he feels a sense of belonging in the community he once doubted. This story is not just about Officer Mark, nor is it solely about a small Filipino community holding a charity event. It is, at its core, a reflection of society's ongoing struggle with prejudice, ignorance, and the transformative power of accountability and empathy. Prejudice, whether born from personal experiences, societal conditioning, or generational bias, is like a veil that clouds our ability to see the truth. For Mark, that veil was woven from years of assumptions, stereotypes, and a misplaced sense of authority. He thought he was doing his job, protecting the law and serving his community. But what he failed to realize was that his definition of community was incomplete. It didn't include the immigrant families who worked tirelessly to contribute to society, or the cultural groups who shared their traditions to bridge divides. His actions on that day were not just an attack on a single event. They were a dismissal of the values this country stands for: freedom, diversity, and inclusion. The Filipino-American community that Mark targeted represented more than just a cultural group. They symbolized resilience, unity, and the belief that no matter where you come from, you can make a difference. Imagine the courage it takes to leave behind your homeland, to start over in a place where the language, the customs, and even the food are unfamiliar. And yet, these communities do it every day. They work long hours, support their families, and, as we saw in this story, give back to those in need. They are the silent backbone of a nation that prides itself on being a melting pot. And yet, all too often, they face judgment and discrimination from the very people they seek to stand beside. Mark's story is a stark reminder that authority without empathy is dangerous. When we stop seeing people as individuals with stories, struggles, and dreams, we strip them of their humanity. Mark didn't see Maria as a passionate leader or the community center as a beacon of hope for the homeless. To him, it was just another problem to solve, another box to check off in his day. His rush to judgment caused pain and humiliation, not just for Maria and her team, but for every person who walked into that event hoping to find warmth, kindness, and support. But this story is also about redemption. It's about the courage it takes to confront our own biases and the humility required to admit when we're wrong. Mark could have doubled down on his actions, justified his behavior, or ignored the consequences. Instead, he chose to listen. He chose to reflect. And in doing so, he began a journey that many of us are too afraid to take, the journey of unlearning. Unlearning prejudice is not easy. It requires us to question everything we've been taught, to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves, and to open our hearts to perspectives we may not understand. For Mark, it started with a simple apology, but an apology is only the first step. True change happens when words are followed by actions. By volunteering at the very event he tried to shut down, Mark not only sought forgiveness, but also made an effort to understand the people he had wronged. And what did he find? He found laughter, joy, and a sense of community unlike anything he had experienced before. He saw elders sharing stories of their homeland, children learning about their heritage, and volunteers pouring their hearts into helping others. He realized that the stereotypes he had clung to for so long were not just wrong, they were holding him back from experiencing the richness of a world full of diversity. Maria and her community also deserve recognition for their grace and resilience. They had every right to hold a grudge, to demand justice, or to shut Mark out completely. But instead, they chose compassion. They saw an opportunity to teach, to heal, and to build a bridge where a wall had been erected. This is the true strength of communities like theirs, the ability to rise above anger and bitterness, to extend a hand even when it has been slapped away. This story is also a call to action for all of us. How many times have we, like Mark, judged someone without knowing their story? How often do we make assumptions based on skin color, accent, or cultural differences? And how often do we fail to recognize the humanity in others because it doesn't align with our own worldview? The world is more interconnected than ever before. We are neighbors, co-workers, and friends with people from every corner of the globe, and yet division persists. Racism, xenophobia, and prejudice are not relics of the past. They are challenges we continue to face every day. But the solution doesn't lie in grand gestures or sweeping reforms alone. It lies in the small, everyday choices we make. It's in the decision to listen instead of judge, to ask questions instead of assuming, to stand up for what is right, even when it's uncomfortable, and perhaps most importantly, to hold ourselves accountable when we fall short. Mark's transformation may seem small in the grand scheme of things, but it's a reminder that change starts with the individuals. If one person can unlearn prejudice, imagine what an entire community, an entire country, or an entire world could achieve. And let us not forget the First Lady's role in this story. Her willingness to step in and advocate for the Filipino community is a powerful example of leadership. She used her platform not to punish or demean, but to educate and empower. Her actions remind us that those in positions of power have a responsibility to stand up for the marginalized and to amplify voices that are often silenced. As we reflect on this story, let's carry its lessons with us. Let's strive to be more like Maria, resilient, compassionate, and unyielding in the face of adversity. Let's challenge ourselves to be more like the First Lady, using whatever influence we have to make a positive impact. And if we find ourselves in Mark's shoes, let's have the courage to admit our mistakes, to learn from them, and to do better. In the end, this story isn't just about a charity event or a police officer's mistake. It's about what it means to be human. It's about recognizing that beneath the surface, we are all more alike than we are different. We all want to be seen, heard, and valued. We all want to belong. And when we choose to embrace those commonalities instead of focusing on our differences, we create a world that is not only more just, but also more beautiful. So, the next time you find yourself quick to judge or dismiss someone, remember this story. Remember Mark's journey, Maria's resilience, and the power of an open heart. And ask yourself, what kind of world do you want to help create? One built on fear and division, or one built on understanding, compassion, and unity? The choice is ours to make every single day.